Karen shoved my nephew on the sidewalk. His uncle is a Supreme Court justice. The first time I saw Karen, she was watering her lawn at 6:00 a.m. wearing a sash that read HOA Watch Commander, like she was in some kind of suburban pageant. We had just moved into Willow Glen after years in an overpacked apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, supposedly safe. I'd taken a new position as a school counselor nearby, and my brother, Raphael, yes, Judge Raphael Martinez, though he never introduces himself that way, had insisted we stay in his second home for a few months while we got on our feet. It's peaceful out there, he'd said. You and Mateo need a reset. Turns out the only thing resetting was my patience. It started small. Karen would glare when Mateo rode his scooter down the sidewalk. She left a typed note on our door about our unapproved porch rug. It was plain beige. Then, one day at the mailbox, she muttered, "Some of us worked hard to live here." I brushed it off. Microaggressions were nothing new to me as a Latina in a mostly white neighborhood. I'd survived worse. I told myself she'd get used to us, but I didn't expect her to push a child. Mateo was 10, quiet, smart, a little shy. He loved astronomy and hated confrontation. That day, he was walking home from school with his favorite notebook in hand. He always stopped at the corner bench to write for a few minutes before coming inside. Karen must have seen him and decided he didn't belong there. Witnesses say she marched over, demanded to see his address, and called him a suspicious minor. When he said he lived on the block, she told him not to lie. Then she grabbed his arm and shoved him off the bench. His notebook tore, his glasses broke. He scraped his elbow hard enough to bleed. I wasn't home, but a neighbor's daughter filmed it. She texted it to me with just 3 words. "Do you know her?" By the time I got there, Mateo was sitting on the curb in tears. Karen stood over him, smug, arms crossed like she'd won a prize. "She doesn't even know who she just messed with," I whispered. Because I wasn't calling 911, I was calling Raphael. Raphael didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When my brother stepped out of his black sedan that evening, the air shifted. Calm, methodical, polished in a gray tailored suit, he didn't look like the kind of man who shouted. He looked like the kind of man people listened to. Because they did. "Ava," he said, gently brushing Mateo's hair from his bandaged forehead. "Tell me exactly what happened." Mateo's lower lip trembled. She pushed me and said I wasn't allowed on her street. Raphael's jaw tensed. Her street. The girl who had filmed the incident, Olivia, age 16, stepped forward with her phone. "I have the whole thing. She told him he looked lost, then shoved him. I posted it to Instagram. People are already asking if he's okay." Raphael watched the video once. Then again. Then he turned to me. "I'm filing an injunction tonight." That's when things began to move. Fast. Within hours. Raphael submitted a formal motion through the local circuit court seeking a protective order against Karen Voss. It cited California's Civil Code, Conagro 51, the Unruh Civil Rights Act, which protects people from discrimination by any business-like entity, including fake HOAs and self-appointed enforcers. The next morning, we got a knock on the door. Not from police, from Karen herself. She was holding a printed cease and desist letter with a gold sticker seal like she'd bought it from a craft store. "You're spreading slander," she snapped. "This child was loitering. We have rules about that." I asked. "You mean the HOA?" "Yes, I'm acting president." Raphael stepped out from the kitchen. Coffee in one hand, injunction copy in the other. "I'm Justice Raphael Martinez," he said calmly, "and that child is under court protection now. If you set foot near him again, you'll be in contempt." Karen's face went pale. For one perfect moment, she couldn't speak. Later that day, I called the county registrar to ask about Willow Glen's HOA. They confirmed it dissolved 3 years ago. Disbanded after budget mismanagement and a lawsuit involving discriminatory housing policies. So, Karen had no legal standing, no titles, no rights to patrol sidewalks. But she had convinced half the neighborhood she did. She printed fake newsletters, held mandatory block meetings, handed out fines. Residents just complied, because fear wears a uniform, even a fake one. I began digging. Online forums told the same story. A disabled veteran fined for parking his adapted van on the street. A Somali family told their patio fabrics weren't culturally appropriate. A teenager with Tourette's mocked by Karen at the community pool and banned for being disruptive. Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing herself. I reached out to a few families privately. Most were hesitant, worried about backlash or being targeted like we were. But one, a woman named Grace, who lived 2 doors down, handed me a manila folder with trembling hands. She threatened to evict my elderly father for installing a rail on our porch. She said it made the neighborhood look geriatric. We're not even renters. We own. Inside the folder were 6 fake violation notices, each signed Willow Glen, Residential Compliance Authority with Karen's name stamped below. All formatted to look official, all completely fake. It was fraud, harassment, possibly even wire fraud, if money was ever exchanged. I sent the evidence to Raphael. He called me back 15 minutes later. This goes deeper than we thought. Karen's illusion of power was crumbling. But what we found next made everything personal. A month earlier, Karen had submitted a grant request to the city for a community preservation initiative, claiming her private HOA was working to reduce urban infiltration. In other words, people like us. She cited Mateo's incident as an example of loitering by non-owners and requested $25,000 in funds for surveillance measures. She didn't just shove a kid, she tried to profit off him. I sat in my living room, fists clenched around that grant form. Mateo curled up on the couch behind me, headphones in, tracing constellations on his sketchpad. She used my nephew to beg the city for money. I whispered. Raphael's voice came sharp on speaker. Then it's time she found out what justice really looks like. Karen wasn't just drunk on power, she was profiting off of it. That grant request to the city wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. She'd used Mateo's name misspelled, but clearly him, and described the incident as a loitering confrontation successfully handled by neighborhood enforcement. It was dated 3 days before she even pushed him. That was the moment we realized Karen was scripting chaos to justify control. Raphael contacted the city's Community Grant Oversight Committee. He didn't come in as a judge. He came in as a concerned resident, accompanied by me, Olivia, the teen who filmed the shove, and Grace, whose father Karen had threatened. We laid it out like a courtroom opening statement. The HOA was fake. The bylaws were fabricated. The enforcement measures were aggressive and discriminatory. Karen's initiative was not only fraudulent, it was exploitative. But then Grace brought out her bombshell, a voice recording, one she'd made months earlier, when Karen visited her porch to warn her about hanging up wind chimes. In the recording, Karen laughed and said, "People listen if you say it's HOA business. These immigrants get scared if you sound official." The room fell silent. Even the city clerk swallowed hard. That clip was the beginning of Karen's unraveling and the start of something bigger. Because if she'd used the same language with others, the pattern could prove racial bias, civil rights violations, a discrimination case that reached far beyond one block. We went public, with Raphael's quiet blessing and a few allies in local media. Olivia's video of the shove was reposted with context. Woman impersonating HOA president pushes Latino child, tries to profit from it. It exploded. Within 48 hours, the city put Karen's grant on hold. Civil rights attorneys reached out to us. Over 24 residents of Willow Glen messaged me privately. They all had stories. A black couple's mortgage approval delayed after Karen warned the bank they had compliance issues. A Chinese-American family told their front decorations lowered property value. A disabled man fined $500 by Karen's parking patrol, which was just a neighbor she paid under the table. This wasn't petty neighborhood drama. It was systemic targeting. We created a digital portal, anonymous, secure, so neighbors could submit records. It filled up overnight. Copies of Karen's flyers, notices, HOA dues she pressured people into paying, handwritten threats, even a fake property audit letter from something she invented, the Willow Glen Residential Unity Board. We cross-checked addresses, dates, payments. Raphael brought in a clerk from his office discreetly, and we began to compile a case. I'll never forget what he said one evening as we spread the documents across his dining table. Karen thought she could weaponize paperwork. She forgot I write the law she's pretending to enforce. We were almost ready to file civil suit until someone slipped a flash drive under our door. No note, no return address, just a tiny USB stick labeled HOA Secrets. Raphael scanned it on an air-gapped laptop. Inside emails. Dozens. Between Karen and a local realtor named Glenn Prescott. Subject lines like, need a reason to shake them out. Too ethnic for the West Side. Trash cans visible, shush to leverage. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was working with Glenn, targeting families she didn't like, manufacturing violations, then pressuring them to sell. Glenn would list their homes, take a cut, and Karen kept control of the neighborhood's character. It was a racket, a modern-day redlining scheme in fake HOA form. They even had a shared spreadsheet color-coded with names, dates, notes like English week, no visible spouse, and under Mateo's name, young male, no record. Fabricate, I couldn't breathe. The next morning, Raphael filed a federal complaint, HUD, DOJ, State Bar Association. The evidence was enough to launch a multi-agency investigation. Karen's fake fines weren't just harassment. They were the tip of a coordinated campaign of discrimination and profiteering. And she had no idea we were the ones behind the investigation building beneath her feet. Meanwhile, the neighborhood turned. Families who had once feared her started standing tall. They posted signs, no fake HOA here. We don't report kids. We protect them. The clubhouse Karen once used for her patrol briefings, a group of mothers reclaimed it. They renamed it the Willow Glen Unity Center and opened it for after-school tutoring. Mateo drew the new logo. Karen doubled down. She printed new flyers, disorder incoming, HOA must be respected. She even posted a bizarre video rant about judicial elitists infiltrating suburbia. That was the day Raphael stood on her lawn and served her himself. Karen Voss, under the authority of the California Superior Court, you are hereby served notice of civil complaint 224 CJ 7683 impersonation of authority, public endangerment, and conspiracy to defraud. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Karen finally saw the truth. She hadn't just messed with a neighborhood. She had messed with the law. The summons was served. The lawsuit was filed. And Karen Voss, the self-appointed queen of a kingdom she made up, was finally cornered. But she didn't back down. She doubled down. 2 days after Raphael served her the civil complaint, she appeared in the cul-de-sac wearing a blazer, a sash that read, Neighborhood Preservation Leader, and unbelievably a plastic badge pinned to her chest. It read, Willow Glen Compliance Officer. Your lawsuit is a smear campaign, she shouted at no one in particular. And this is harassment of a female community leader. That afternoon, she posted a video to her 200-subscriber YouTube channel titled, I'm being silenced for protecting our streets. It would have been laughable if she wasn't still terrorizing people. But now, people were filming her back. Every time she walked up to a home, a porch camera caught her. Every time she made a threat, someone was ready to document it. What she didn't know was that while she was uploading rants, we were submitting affidavits. While she was handing out fake citations, we were finalizing testimonies. Raphael worked late into the nights. I saw sides of him most never would. Not the judge behind the bench, but the uncle, hunched over the dining room table, reading every heartbreaking statement from neighbors who'd stayed silent for years. I missed this one, he said quietly, eyes locked on the page. She fined a woman for building a wheelchair ramp for her dad. Said it ruined the view aesthetic. He slammed his palm down on the table. Once. Then he looked at me. We're taking her all the way to trial. The city launched its own audit. Karen's fake HOA dues had never been accounted for. She'd collected over $37,000 in maintenance fees in under 2 years, but none of that went to any contractor, service, or city permit. She was using it to pay Glenn Prescott, the realtor, and fund her compliance patrol efforts. which included hiring 2 teens to post warning stickers on residents' doors. They thought they were doing community service. One of them, Miguel, came to our house crying when he found out. She said I was helping the neighborhood. He said, I didn't know I was hurting people. Rafael told him the truth. You're not the one who did harm. She is. And finally, the tipping point came. Karen tried to issue a neighborhood arrest notice. She taped it to our door. It was a piece of paper with a cartoon gavel, my name written in red Sharpie, and the words, Eva Martinez is hereby evicted from the Willow Glen HOA zone for violating Section 19 civil interference. You and your nephew are banned from all communal zones, including sidewalks, benches, and recreational corridors. She signed it Karen Voss, Willow Glen Sovereign Compliance Judge. That was the last mistake she ever made, because Rafael forwarded the document directly to the State Attorney General's office. Within 48 hours, Karen was placed under emergency court order for impersonating a government officer, attempted civil eviction, harassment of a minor, and misuse of public funds. The sheriff's department arrived with an order to seize all HOA enforcement materials from her garage. They found 800 fake violation slips, 14 counterfeit neighborhood maps with color-coded clearance zones, dozens of fine payment receipts, none of which went through real HOA systems, and a framed certificate naming her citizen judge of Willow Glen, printed on printer paper with a seal from a fantasy website. Her empire collapsed in one afternoon, but that wasn't the end. The courtroom was... Karen Voss stood trial on 6 charges: impersonation of a government officer, civil harassment of a minor, fraudulent representation, defamation, financial misconduct, and conspiracy to interfere with housing access. Rafael couldn't preside, obviously, but he testified when he walked to the stand and said, "That woman shoved my nephew and tried to profit off his pain." The courtroom went dead silent. Olivia played her video. Grace submitted her audio. Miguel testified. So did 4 other families. And finally, Mateo spoke. He stood on a plastic crate so the mic could reach him. His voice shook, but he said, "She told me I didn't belong, but I do. And I want to live somewhere people aren't afraid of who they are." You could hear the sound of dozens of people exhaling. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. Karen was sentenced to 6 months of community confinement, 1,000 hours of community service, and ordered to pay full restitution to the victims, plus $50,000 in civil penalties for discriminatory conduct. The court banned her from operating in any official capacity in neighborhood leadership for life. Her realtor partner Glenn lost his license. The fake HOA was declared a fraudulent operation, and the county posted signs on every entrance to Willow Glen. No active HOA, present neighborhood governed by local ordinance and community board. Residents are protected by state and federal law. A month later, I stood with Mateo at the new community mural painted near the school. The words were his, "We all belong." No one gets to say otherwise. He's doing better now. He still gets nervous at benches sometimes, but he stands taller, writes more. He even wants to be a civil rights lawyer someday. And Rafael, he's not just my brother anymore. He's the reason my nephew still believes in justice. Karen's voice used to echo through the cul-de-sac like a siren, commanding, intrusive, uninvited. Now, all we hear is laughter, kids racing bikes, neighbors chatting across fences. Mateo leading his little Constitution Club with hand-drawn flyers and printed pocket copies of the Bill of Rights. He carries his notebook again, too, not like a shield, but like a badge. The street is lighter, not because Karen is gone, but because the weight of fear is. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Healing rarely does. But the turning point wasn't in the courtroom. It was the town hall we hosted 2 weeks later. We called it Justice Starts Here, and it wasn't about punishment. It was about truth-telling. We invited every resident who'd ever felt invisible, unheard, or wrongfully policed by Karen's fake authority. We didn't ask for outrage. We asked for stories, and they came. Grace talked about her father being afraid to walk outside after Karen called him too frail to be visible. A black high school student named Jaden shared how Karen accused him of casing houses every time he jogged with earbuds. An elderly Korean couple, Mr. and Mrs. Han, admitted they'd paid Karen over $1 or $200 in fake dues out of fear they'd be removed. One by one, they stood up and said, "This happened to me." And finally, someone else always replied, "It wasn't your fault." We launched a neighborhood accountability committee. Not a watchdog group, not an authority, just a rotating council of volunteers with one job: protect each other. Listen, learn, intervene when needed, not with power, but with presence. We also created a scholarship in Mateo's name, the Willow Glen Belonging Grant, for students who face discrimination but want to lead in law, education, or civil service. Raphael funds the first year anonymously. He says it's not about legacy, it's about making sure the next Mateo doesn't have to testify in court before turning 11. Karen eventually moved away, quietly. No press, no parting post. We didn't celebrate her leaving. That's not justice. That's erasure. And what we needed was acknowledgement. So we kept her name in the lessons we now teach. At the mural Mateo helped design, we added a plaque in memory of every time someone said, "You don't belong," and was proven wrong. One afternoon, Olivia, now applying to journalism school, asked me something as we repainted a swing set together. "Do you think people like Karen always get what's coming to them?" I paused, thought of the court, the tears, the trauma. Then I said, "Maybe not always, but when we come together, when we speak up, we tilt the scale, even a little. And sometimes, a little tilt is all it takes to topple something built on lies." Mateo sleeps soundly now. No more checking the window for that yelling lady. No more flinching at doorbells. He's not afraid of sidewalks anymore, because we didn't just win a case. We reclaimed our street, and we made it ours again. Karen's story is not unique. Across the country, people abuse fake authority to silence others, especially those who look or live differently. If you've seen something like this, speak up, document it, stand beside someone, not just behind them. If you're part of a neighborhood group, ask, are we protecting or are we policing? Are we building community or controlling it? Share your story, share your truth. Justice doesn't just live in courtrooms. Sometimes it lives at the edge of a bench where a child was once told they didn't belong and decided to stay anyway. Let's make sure every street knows belonging is not permission. It's a right,